Hey everyone, this is Amanda Moore from the Angelman Syndrome Foundation, and you're listening to the ASF podcast, the show that explains everything you want to know about Angelman syndrome. We're so excited you're here, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Colin, thank you so much for being here. We are so excited to have you back to join the Angelman Syndrome Foundation and be a part of our community. I wanted to give you opportunity just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can talk all things toileting.
Sure. Thank you for the invite. The conference that I got to attend last year was phenomenal, and I know you guys have another one coming up. And I hope that all the families can benefit from some of the stuff I'll talk about today, but also some of the other speakers that are coming. So I'm Dr. Colin Muething. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Marcus Autism Center. So my department that I am the director of is called Complex Behavior Support Program. And we work with children with developmental disabilities. So I'm at an autism center, but in Complex, we will see any child with a diagnosed developmental disability. It does not necessarily have to be autism. Given that I'm at an autism center, the vast majority, 90% of the kids that I do see do come with an autism diagnosis, but I say that because the services and the things that I'm going to be talking about that are related to toileting are not autism specific. They are children specific, and they are probably more children with developmental disability specific. So in my role as director, I oversee 8 to 10. I don't have an exact number because we add another service line every year, different service lines, and I'll kind of briefly talk through those. So we have our what's called our Ruby program, which is a 1 hour a week telehealth that is geared towards maybe newly diagnosed children, working on some general parenting strategies on how to respond to or avoid externalizing behavior. We have a more moderate program, which is 2 to 5 hours a week. And then we have our intensive program, which the kids are here 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for that training. Those are services that are specific to the treatment of externalizing behaviors. Think aggression, self-injury, elopement, those types of behaviors. In addition to that, we also have a toilet training program. And so we have both a consultation toileting program, which is like a 1 hour a week with a psychologist, or we have our intensive training program, which is 5 days a week, 5 hours a day for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. We also have both urine training program and a bowel movement training program that's specifically for toilet training for kids with developmental disabilities.
Those are all so important and so important to our community. And I think a lot of people within the community also have dual diagnosis of autism and Angelman syndrome, and kind of the idea that autism is the product of the Angelman syndrome diagnosis. So one of the things I had a question about with that is, does your facility, do they allow out of state therapies? Can people apply? Because this is something that is so common in our community. Everyone's always asking questions about toilet training, but not just that. I want to talk about your other behavior and elopement and all of that. Since you do telehealth, how does that work for anyone who might be out of state of Georgia?
Yeah, so great question. So when we're talking about out of state, I'll tackle telehealth first. So there are some states where, as a psychologist, I am certified to provide telehealth services as a psychologist, which can incorporate behavior analysis, which is what I also do, to about 40 different states. So I have a credential that allows me to provide telehealth services to those states as a psychologist. As a behavior analyst, you're much less likely to be able to provide those services across state lines. The behavior analysis is a newer profession. They have not caught up with kind of like psychology. Psychology is very established as a profession. So we have an entire credential that covers 40 states. Behavior analysis doesn't even have a licensure in all 50 states yet to like juxtaposition the two professions. So as a psychologist, I can definitely see kids out of state. Now, we do see a lot of kids out of state, but they end up traveling to come to us, right? So we have for toileting and for the externalizing behaviors. So we have a lot of families that will pick up and move to Atlanta, and we have a care coordination department that will help try and set up housing, whether that's like Airbnb, hotel. We've used the Ronald McDonald House. It just kind of depends. We have a variety of different ways we do it. But we are more apt to see kids out of state in person, meaning the family moves here, than we do during telehealth, just because of some of the license laws that exist state to state.
Perfect. Makes total sense. And we are not, again, as a community, it is not uncommon for families to go across state lines to go to intensive therapies, whether it's PT, OT, speech. So all of this is not new to our community, but the idea of doing it for something as like toileting is, I think, revolutionary. I mean, this is one thing that we are always being asked about. And I wanted to ask you two things because you came to our conference, and I hope you will come back to our conference in 2026. But what was your of that? I mean, it was busy. It was our largest one, the biggest gathering of Angelman syndrome individuals in the world. What was your biggest takeaway from our conference?
My biggest takeaway was a very personal thing. So I brought my kids. I travel around for conferences and talks, as part of my job. But my kids are just now getting to the age where I can bring them. So they're 8 and 6 years old. And to me, the biggest takeaway from that conference was exposure for my children
Mhm.
to individuals that might look different or behave differently. And you'd think, why is this guy who does this for a living just now exposing them? Well, it's not the first time. I have an uncle with Down syndrome that's how I got into the field. He grew up with my family. My uncle Tim is at my house with my kids quite a bit. So they have exposure, but it was different. And Angelman has just like autism, there's a spectrum, right? With all different presentations, ambulatory differences and things like that. And I think it was another eye-opening experience for my own children to and then there were a lot of questions. You can see they were starting to kind of be, like my uncle Tim is part of the family. And so there are no questions about my uncle, but maybe somebody else that they were seeing at the conference. Well, why do they have a walker? Or why are they in a chair? Why aren't they talking? Those sorts of questions from my own children. And my wife's in the same field. We were both special education teachers. That's how we met. And I think for us, it was very uh, just enlightening to kind of watch that through the lens of my own kids. I grew up in this kind of field and I had a lot of opportunity to educate my friends, right? So in high school, my uncle Tim would come to us with us to parties and go around. He was kind of like the extra guy friend that was always with us. And so I had that exposure as an adolescent and kind of exposure for my friends. It was really awesome to expose my children to some of that and some of the takeaways. And they still ask some questions, they're out in the community at Kroger and they see somebody, they might ask questions, but the questions are so much more appropriate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kids say the darndest things. They're very
100%.
honest when they say stuff, and I'm like, no, you can't say that out loud, you know. But
But
we
it's,
were able to shape that up. It was
yeah,
awesome.
I love that. And I love that you brought them and were able for them to experience that because it was such a joyful event and it was crazy and there was so much going on. But I'm very involved with the siblings of
Mhm.
individuals with Angelman syndrome. And it's interesting that you bring up, they know what they know. And so they've grown up with their sibling. But even being able to see, I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and being able to see them with adults, learning more about adults with Angelman syndrome was really unique and special. And you're right, you can just see the wheels turning. And I will say, as a parent, I love the questions that younger children bring. Whereas an adult, we're like, oh my gosh, you're right, you can't say that in public. But as a parent of an individual with
Yeah.
Angelman syndrome, it really does. It's like, oh, they just want to know. It's
Yeah.
innocent, it's blissful. So thank you for that. And you alluded to my next question, but what got you into this field? And I
Yeah.
love that you have
I'm
Uncle
sure.
Tim. He sounds
Yeah, I'm sure you know where I'm
fantastic.
headed. So my uncle Tim, he is, he's, oh man, I'm about to turn 40, so he's about to turn 60, which for Down syndrome is lengthy. And that, I think that my mom and dad, given that my mom is also in the field, I'll get to that as well, have done a great job kind of caring for him and watching the food and watching his heart and making sure he's in the doctors for any of those sorts of things. And he's lived a very full life with a ton of experiences. And a lot of that is, I have two younger brothers, and Tim was kind of the fourth brother, and he went to everything with us. And we used to take all of our friends and go to the adult with disabilities like Valentine's dance. Like it was like this thing where like we exposed a lot of our community to the community of individuals with disabilities, and so that was part of it. That was part of how I got into this. I grew up really taking care of him and helping, and I still do. He still comes to our house for weekends when my mom and dad are like, we want to go take a break. And I'm like, yeah, send him over here. And so that was part of it. But the other part was my mom. My mom she never actually got her BCBA, her board certification in behavior analysis, because she started in behavior analysis before the certification existed. She got all the degrees, graduate degrees in special education with an emphasis in behavior analysis, but they didn't have a certification back then. And so, I grew up kind of going to work with her and learning about some of the things that she did. She actually did kind of an internship when she was thinking about getting her BCBA certification. She was here at Marcus, working with Dr. Nate Call, who currently Nate is the VP of Marcus. When he was doing that, he was actually in my role. He was the director of Complex. And so my mom worked with him, and then I got introduced to him, and I was like, oh, I really like this job. Like, and I really like the psychology aspect of it, and went and got my PhD and came right back and kind of get to sit in I was in this office with him 15 years ago, kind of like learning. And now I'm sitting it's my office now, which is very weird. But a combination of my mom and my uncle definitely put me into this field. I knew it was going to be kids. I actually started as a pre-med. I wanted to do developmental pediatrics, and go down the medicine route. And I joke that organic chemistry was a weed out class, and it weeded me out very quickly from science, and the biological sciences. And so I just moved into kind of a parallel profession where I still get to work with kids with disabilities. That was always the goal. So my mom and my uncle for sure.
Love it. I love how you just opened your community up to other so that they can learn and just be involved with individuals with disabilities and learn how to interact and be a part and inclusion at its best. So I absolutely think that's something that our community needs more of. Our world needs more of it. So thank you for being in this space, and what a full circle moment for you, being back in that office. I love that. We are definitely going to plug the Marcus Autism Center, and how people can potentially sign up to come to intensives and whatever that might be. I would love for that to be something that's opened up to our community. So we will do that. But right now, let's shift to yours. Well, you have lots of specialties, which I feel like we could do 12 different podcasts with everything that you do. But I would love to shift to the toileting aspect of things.
Yeah.
And just kind of an overview from your perspective, and I'll have follow-up questions or stop you, but kind of like what you did. You led our conference session, and it was very well received. I know you did some individual sessions as well, but just the overview of toileting and how it can be done with individuals with disabilities, and now you've seen it done with Angelman syndrome as well.
Sure. So to start, toileting to me, not only is it like a crucial, important skill that like no one's going to argue that, but it's been one of those things where it's been very reinforcing for me. So to give you an example is, in our intensive program in Complex that, kids are here 5 days a week, 5 hours a day for aggression. Those children sometimes are with us for 1 to 3 years. It is not a quick process to kind of find a treatment that reduces those externalizing behaviors. And so if you need a quick source of reinforcement, and toileting is a good thing, right? So sometimes I have cases that I'm on for 2 years. But in the interim, I also have these toileting cases that after about 3 weeks, I get to see the look on the parents' faces. Oh my gosh, I don't have to buy pull-ups anymore. And my child's going to the bath. It's so reinforcing for me. It's such a crazy impact on the family. It's one thing to like work with a child who is super aggressive and get that reduced. But the impact on families when I'm like, you don't have to do diapers and you don't have to do changes and you don't have to like do all of or the accidents that are all around the house. Like it's a very, very big deal for families. And so I really like it from that regard that I get a lot of reinforcement out of like, looking at the families after I'm done. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And I believe, and this is played out, I believe that every kid is trainable. I have been told by medical personnel that there are some kids that are not toilet trainable, and we said challenge accepted, bring it. And kids who are in wheelchairs that are non-ambulatory, like we have toilet trained kids and medical professionals that then we go back to and they're like, holy cow, totally believer, like this is possible. We've even been told like for maybe a child who doesn't have vocal speech, and I'm like, why do they need to have speech? Like, why vocal? Like we have devices or cards, like, or also like you don't necessarily have to, like that
Right.
isn't like a step that you have to have.
There are ways to communicate that are not verbal, absolutely.
Exactly.
Or even with
Exactly.
a device for younger
Yes,
children. Yes.
right. And so over the years, we have really just taken on those challenges, and I'm just like, yeah, we will try everything we will try it once with every kid, right? And some kids we don't have success with for some other reason, right? But we are a unit that will never look at a case and be like, too complicated. Like that we actually are like, ooh, complicated, bring it. Like that's the fun stuff. And so I want to start with, I think every kid is trainable. I firmly believe, I think every adult is trainable. When we get adults here, I can see adults up until 21,
Yeah.
and we get 19-year-olds that they're like, well, just because he's 19. And I'm like, well, that's not, age doesn't matter. Learning can happen at any age. And so I always start with every kid's trainable. Now we're not 100% successful, right? And because sometimes, while every kid's trainable, it might be something that like they need intensive kind of like toilet training for months and months and months, which we just don't have the capability of doing right now. Um, and so while every kid's trainable, we're not 100%. We are pretty successful though, and like 90% of kids.
It's a,
Uh,
it's a
yeah.
huge successful number.
Yes. And so like I definitely can hang my hat on that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That 10% though is where I really focus, right? What are the reasons why I can't be successful with those 10%? Now I have a variety of hypotheses. Too many to probably go into, and this will be too nerdy to kind of go into. But we are pretty successful with a majority of kids and young adults. And we have a progression of toilet training that we go through that I'll kind of briefly describe, and then just pepper me with questions if you have any. But we start with telehealth and consultation, right? And we actually started that years ago. So when I first started like kind of like moving into a leadership role here at Marcus, one of the first things we noticed was we were having kids that showed up for at back then we called it 2 week toileting. So five hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 weeks. And we were having kids show up. And the first day, all we do is we take the kid to the bathroom every hour and we just see how it goes. We call it a baseline day. We get to know the kid. We play with them a lot so that, it's not a bad place to come to tomorrow and things like that. But what we were finding was there was like a large percentage, maybe a third of kids that showed up. And as long as we took them to the bathroom every hour, they weren't having accidents. So
Right.
they were essentially toilet trained by our definition, right? Our goal is to get them to where we are the parent or we are taking the child on the average of every hour and they're remaining dry, right? It's not that the kid's independently going by themselves to the bathroom that like we might still need to take them, but they're staying dry. And so what we were seeing was kids would come in on day one and they were staying dry. And we were like, okay, well, then there are a subset of kids that we just need to train the parents on how to take them to the bathroom every so often, and they will experience success. And so we shifted then to, okay, let's start with some telehealth. maybe like 3 weeks, 1 hour a week, where we just get on and we give the caregiver some uh, generic instructions on toilet training at home. And such as take them to the bathroom every 45 minutes or every hour. Provide reinforcement when they void in the toilet, which is looks like a prize, that sort of thing. When they have an accident, do this. And so it was these generic instructions for families. And what we found was when we did that, we were actually like 40 to 50% of kids in that model across 3 to 6 hours were being trained. Like
Yeah.
that's all it took was 3 hours from a BCBA and the kid was trained. It's great. I mean, like if we can do it in 3 hours, why bring them in for 5 hours a day for, 10
Right.
days?
Yeah.
And so about 50% of kids, and I still run those appointments. I really like it. I just met with a family this morning. Last week, the dad was like, "Yeah, we've only had like one or two successes in the toilet." And I was like, "Keep going, give it a shot." And this week, he was like, "We haven't had an accident in 4 days." Like, and she started going on her own. Like, she's telling us, "I need to go to the bathroom." And I'm like, "Yeah, time. Toilet training just takes time, right?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the flip switches, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" The kid gets it, and you're like, "Wow!" All of a
And the
sudden,
experience, I feel like, and that's how my son is now. We started on a time training and it
yep,
works really well. And they experience not having accidents. They experience the joy of being able to do something yet independently that they were told, and their parents were told, as always, no, they're never going to be this. You're going to have to find the right supplies and da 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 da. Like we hear so many times within the Angelman community that they will never blank. And so to experience success is so rewarding for both families, but it
yep,
takes, like you said, takes time. I think consistency. And I
yep,
think that piece can be so difficult for our families is like the consistency or being able to implement it at school,
oh,
having the knowledge and the resources and everything to make sure that it's written into their IEP and that they're having the opportunity at school. I think is a big hang up. Do you ever do any kind of talking with beyond just the parents and the family, but caretakers as well?
yeah, we will. I mean, one of the things we tell families is we'll train whoever. Like you
Yeah.
tell us to train, the person who works at the church daycare. Sure, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And so schools are obviously schools are half of kids' lives day to day, right? And so like it's a hugely important setting. We will absolutely talk to schools. The caveat to that is, does the school want to talk to us?
100%. Yes.
And that is where, we work to build positive relationships with school systems, but every now sometimes it's different school to school
Yeah.
based on the administration. But
100%.
we try and offer that. And worst case, if the school says no, then we do provide some support and advocacy to parents on the way to get schools to do this is put it in the IEP. It's a legal document.
Mhm.
Once it's in there, they have to do it.
Good.
But it is you're nail on the head. Like schools also, they'll oftentimes come to us and say, we don't have the resources to take the child to the bathroom every hour. And I tell the parents, say, it's not my problem. Like it's not your problem. That's the school's problem.
Right. Right.
And
They have to figure it out.
if this is a
Yeah.
life skill the kid needs, the school
Right.
needs to figure it out. And, I know that sounds harsh, but that's public schooling. Like we're supposed to provide a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. It's a federal law. It's not hard.
Right.
And so they have to do it. And then if they're not, then you get a lawyer.
Right.
I mean, like,
Because the
uh,
last thing that you want is a kid to experience success and experience what that feels like, and then have to go back into having accidents and what that I can only imagine mentally takes the toll on both sides as well.
yeah, and the caregivers. What I
Yeah.
will say, what's interesting about that though, is, one of the things that I tell parents a lot is it's kind of a analogous example, right? So parents going on a road trip and they're going to be in the car for 6 hours, right? And we've just toilet trained them. They're going every hour, blah blah blah. And the parents like, look, stopping every hour just like is not tenable for me at this time. And what I always say is, that's fine. You can put them in a pull up. It does not break it, right? It doesn't break the urine training, right? To have them in a pull-up for a few hours, right? And so I hear this with schools too, because it's like, the kid becomes very upset about having an accident, right? And what I don't want is I don't want toileting or the bathroom to become a bad place, right? I want it to be positive. It should be. And so I have told parents while you're navigating the school system, put them in a pull up when they go to school because I don't want the negative experience for the child to be there, you know?
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not going to break it. We can put them back in underwear at home and we're right back to it.
Right back where you were. Which
Yeah.
stopping, we just did this too. We just went on a road trip. It's summer, it's all these things. And we did stop at the bathroom and do all the things. We have 3 kids, so we're always stopping at bathrooms. But what do you have any tips? And I'll let you get into the rest of your talk. But do you have any tips on public bathrooms? Like, what do you have portable seats? Like, what tips and tricks do you give parents so you can be like, you can do the gross public bathrooms. You just have to do what you have to do. What are
This
your
is so common. And there are a variety of different reasons. And a lot of them are, for lack of a better term, maybe related to some phobias that have like developed in kids, like the
Mhm.
hair dryer, the hand dryers.
How
They're
loud they
loud.
are? Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, like that's a common one, right? Or
Right.
just the presence of other people
Right.
is a big one. And so if what I try and do is get to the bottom of maybe what's the reason, right? So like what do we think the hypothesized reason that the child is quote scared of a public restroom, right? And if it's, for example, if it's, the presence of other people, like, oh, we go into Target and when we go into the main bathroom and there's no one in there, they're fine. But if we go into Target and we go into the main bathroom and there's someone in there and they won't use the bathroom, well, I say, well, just go ahead and find the family restroom. Like, let's
Always
not,
find the family restroom.
yeah,
That
like
is my go-to everywhere we go.
let's not make it crazy.
Yes.
I mean, like you can find individual bathrooms at most places. If it's public restrooms in general, um, you know, I will recommend like a car potty
Mhm.
for kids. I mean, I
Yeah.
did that with my own children on car trips because I didn't. My wife is very anti gas station bathrooms and how gross they are, and so we had a car potty, so that's fine as
Understandable.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's gross. And then, the other thing that I've talked to parents about and I've given some recommendations, it's a little bit harder to do when I'm like not in person, like observing, is almost like a desensitization type protocol to
Yeah.
public bathrooms because sometimes it's just a phobia of the unknown. This is
Mhm.
not my routine, right?
Yeah.
It's not my normal bathroom with my normal sink and my normal soaps and all of that stuff. And like I will actually have a child or a young adult just like walk into a public restroom and then leave, and that's it. And if you did it successfully with like no, non cooperation, or you were cooperative the entire time, maybe you earn something. You earn an edible or a candy, or you get to leave the store, or then if you're at Target, you get to go to the chip aisle and get some chips. And then the next time you go to a public restroom, maybe it's like 15 seconds. And then maybe you work up to like staying in there for a minute, and then maybe you sit on the toilet and then you leave. It's
Yeah.
very
Gradual.
slowly fading
Yeah.
them into the bathroom. It takes a long time, but it's successful.
Yeah. Whatever works. I mean, whatever works to get over the hump of being in public, because
Yeah.
we are all for same thing. I did the car potties. I have 2 sons and a daughter. Like if there's not a family bathroom, we're really kind of up the creek. But those car potties only last so long. And so when your children start to get older and they no longer are able to, you have to have that other option. And the gross bathrooms, I feel like sometimes I take Lysol wipes in there with me and like just
Yeah.
sit on them, do whatever you can. But no, those
The
are
other
great.
thing I've recommended is, and I'm sure if like somebody from the hotel industry is listening to this, they're like, oh, I hate those people. Like, I'm like, go to a hotel and walk in the lobby bathroom because those are clean and they're empty. And
Yeah,
like, and Target, Walmart, while like they might be clean, they're just crowded spaces,
right.
and hotels are usually empty.
Never would have thought to stop at a hotel bathroom. That's a great tip.
I don't
And
think
if
they
anyone
like
has a
it, but
problem with that, they are welcome to, bring it up with us. What are they
right.
going to say?
Right.
Hey guys, it's Amanda here. As you know, we're here for you, our community. If you have questions about any topics we can discuss in our podcast, or if you have ideas for future episodes, We'd love to hear from you. All you need to do is email me at dearamanda@angelman.org. Thank you so much for listening and your continued support of the Angelman Syndrome Foundation.
Well, I cut you off on your, so now we know that time training really can work, and it can work, and it takes consistency, it takes practice, it takes time. But what are some of your other things when that doesn't necessarily go according to plan?
Yeah. So, and to add to that, it takes consistency, practice, time, and a lot of my work is working with parents to change parents' behavior, right? So you have to if we're talking about like toilet training, you are in a way revamping a lot of what you're doing throughout the day. So your life is changing, right? And so a lot of it is setting parents up to kind of change what they do day to day. So about 40 or 50% of the kids who go through just the telehealth model, 3 to 5 hours, are successful. About 20% of those are unsuccessful, but that's more for like environmental reasons, like cancellations, or it just wasn't the time to kind of like have the intervention. And then there's another 40% or so that are not successful. And those kids are referred up to our more intensive model, which I mentioned is 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And, we used to call it 2 weeks. We got away from that just because then parents thought it was exactly 2 weeks, and it's never exactly anything. Sometimes it's 8 days, sometimes it's 17 days. It just depends on progress and the child.
Okay.
And so the intensive program, I want to kind of describe what that looks like for the kids that come every day. Is our first day, we spend just getting to know the child and taking them to the bathroom every hour. And we're collecting data on, how cooperative is the child in the bathroom? Is there any sort of like challenges in the bathroom that we need to like adjust for, such as like providing the child a distractor item while they sit, and things like that. And so the first day is really just to get to know the child. We run a lot of preference assessments. So what that means is we are just really putting out a bunch of stuff in front of the child and seeing what they gravitate towards, and then ranking them in order, because the number one thing is going to be the thing that we use for toileting. And then day 2, we start the intensive sit schedule. And the reason we do it in the clinic and we're not doing this with caregivers through telehealth is that we are recommending, or our staff are implementing, basically they take the child to the bathroom every 5 minutes. And that is intensive. That's as intensive as you
program. Yep.
Yeah. They basically, the first day or two is spent in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And that is because we need to catch the urine going in the toilet so we can provide the reinforcement and all of that stuff, right? To kind of have that learning occur. And then we move up levels. So we go 5 minutes off, and then, or then 10 minutes off, 15 off. And we try and get all the way to level 7, which is 1 hour off the toilet. And we only move up levels based on the child's success, right? So if I start at level 1, which is 5 minutes off the toilet, I'm not going to move to level 2 if the child's still having accidents. I'm looking for them to have 3 consecutive voids in the toilet before I then move to 10 minutes off. And then so on and so forth until I get to an hour. And that's where we then provide the training to the parents on how to do this at home. So then we're back to what we were doing in telehealth, which is take your child to the bathroom every hour. We've gotten the child all the way to that space where they are successful going every hour. And then it's about training the caregivers or school to do it in all of the other environments that are going on. So that's our urine training program. And that goes through like all of our like urine training from consultation through the intensive model.
It's a lot. But it's like you said, I think as parents at any point, we would do anything to get out of pull-ups. And I think I remember being newly diagnosed. And so it sets in, my son was diagnosed at 17 months. And it's like you're running through all these things of things that you're told your child won't do, things that you're sure he will or she will do. And then it's trying to compartmentalize, all right, we've got to set goals and prioritize. And I felt like and feel like for a lot of families, the potty training aspect is just not something that's prioritized right at 2 and 3 years old, because you're dealing with so many other things between feeding and mobility and whatnot. But it still comes up. And I think a question I had, is there ever an age that is too early with the understanding that it's really hard to be at that age to be consistent between the
Mhm.
therapies and the appointments and the cars and possibly other siblings.
It's a great question. And I don't have like a solid answer. It's always going to be individualized for every kid, which is
Sure.
pretty much every answer I'm going to give to every question, and it depends.
Right.
But I think for this question, one of the things that I would recommend is for families to think like do an inventory of all the things they have going on
Mhm.
and really think about what are my priorities right now, right? And like you said, there's a lot of mobility and feeding that are like huge priorities early on to the point where if those are high priority, then like the toileting can take a back seat for a minute, right? It doesn't need to be immediate. Like I said, every kid at every age to me is trainable. And so like whether you start at 5 or 3 isn't necessarily that big of a difference. But if at 3 you're focused on learning to walk and learning to feed yourself, those are pretty important skills that you might need before you're toilet trained. I know, but it also is dependent on the family and their value. You know,
Right.
what do they think
No.
is most important for their child?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I would say in general, our intensive program, I think the youngest we'll see is 4.
Okay.
And that's because
What's
generally at 2 and 3, sometimes kids start to develop those skills like just appropriately and developmentally. So we try and get them past the point where we expect it maybe to occur
yeah.
and say now we're at the point where our services are appropriate. So it's like 4 or 5.
Would you suggest for families who are like, okay, my child is 2 or 3, maybe sometimes we can put him on the potty to try and go, maybe sometimes we couldn't. Is it worth even doing at that age? Or is that going to create, again, some sort of slide of sometimes they go and sometimes they don't go on the potty and then they're in a pull-up or a diaper? What should
Great
you?
question. I think you should always practice
Okay. Good
because
to know.
even the skill of being like sitting on a toilet, even if they don't void, but they sit there for 2 minutes. When we
Yeah.
get to intensive toilet training, we are asking the kids to sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And when it's bowel movement training, it's 30 minutes. And so if we can have cooperation in the bathroom, that's a huge protective factor for toilet training going well. And so practicing, even if you're not getting success, things like that, even if you say once a week for like 4 hours, I'm going to do just take them to the bathroom every 30 minutes, or if it's twice a day or like every day before bed or something like that. Those are all good things to practice because the behavior in the bathroom will impede our ability to do toilet training if we're not able to be cooperative with some of those skills. But also think not just sitting, but like you could be learning how to wash your hands. You could be
Yeah.
learning how to pull your pants up. You could be learning how to wipe. Those are all skills that like, might take time to learn and especially wiping. I mean, like that is a hard skill. I'm dealing with my own
I
6-year-old.
was gonna say
Uh,
with neurotypical kids, that is a hard skill.
oh my gosh. And I like struggle with how to teach it. And I teach kids how to do stuff all the time. And I'm like, how do I teach this? This is a very hard skill. But practice is always better
Yeah.
because once you get to training, then the practice will help you like move faster.
Yeah. But then on the other side of things, we've kind of tackled young. What about you say no one is ever too late to learn? So for families out there who their individual with Angelman syndrome is a full adult, still, and that's something that they want to, because like I said, everyone is always learning. That is
Mhm.
nothing that within our community ever stops.
Mhm.
Do you have any tips since the Marcus Autism Center only goes up to 21? Do you have any tips for how would you even start it later in life? Same as you would start a 5-year-old?
I mean, the strategies are going to be the same, right? The
Hmm.
strategies. This is why I love behavior analysis, right? And I had a meeting earlier today with a law firm in Canada because they're trying to open up ABA services for kids in Canada with autism. And I joked that, right now in the state of Georgia, apparently my skills stop when a kid doesn't have autism or when they turn 21. Apparently, all of the strategies that I use just magically stop working when they don't have autism or when they're older than 21, which is a bizarre thing, but that is here we are with insurers, and
Yes.
that's just the way that it is.
The
But
larger
it's
problem we all want to tackle. Yeah.
well, it's one of the it's a it's definitely a goal for my career is publishing a lot of papers that show, I'm pulling together a toileting kind of manuscript now that is just any kid without autism. So think CP,
Mhm.
Angelman, like any, and I'm just going to say, hey, here are 20 kids that don't have autism. Look, they all got toilet trained just like all those kids over there with autism. Like, can we stop saying autism and ABA are synonymous? It's not.
Right. Right.
And so for adults, it's not that much different. Is that like we are going to be prompting the individual to go to the bathroom on a schedule? We're going to be providing a reinforcer for going in the toilet. We're going to be having a standard protocol for when there's an accident, those sorts of things. And so my advice to adults is reach out to other families in similar situations, like in Georgia, like in Gwinnett County,
Mhm.
that, again, I'm autism specific because of where I work. And I don't know as much about like Angelman support group except for what y'all do. But
Right.
like in Gwinnett County, there's a huge spectrum support group and
Mhm.
it's spans the lifespan. And so what I always say is like go find some of the other adult caregivers and kind of talk to them about what they did. And the other thing is be consumers of the science.
Mhm.
And as weird as that sounds, is parents can get access to journal articles, and the way that articles are written they are supposed to be written in a way that you can replicate it. So,
Yeah.
when we talk about encopresis and our bowel movement training, I get because we are the only ones in the country that have developed this protocol that is hugely successful. I get so many inquiries from all across the country, and I send them the article from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, and I say, here's the article. Like the method section literally is like bulleted list of what you're supposed to do, and you
Yeah.
can replicate it to the point where parents have then come back and been like, yeah, that was super easy. And I'm like, yeah, we write those in a way so that you should be able to like take it and do it, right? But
Writing yourself right on
it's
business.
yeah, I mean, but as weird as it sounds, is I encourage parents to be consumers of the literature.
Yeah.
The science is out there. We're publishing this stuff constantly, and for this population, Angelman in general, is don't like only search Angelman, right? When you're like, don't go Angelman and toileting, right? Go
Right.
toileting and developmental disabilities, toileting and autism. Like the strategies are going to be similar. And
Yeah.
so like even for adults, just consume it.
That's perfect. And with that, if, we hear a lot about my child won't sit, they won't go, they won't stay. Do you have like a top tip that you give? We do reward based. You sit on the
Mhm.
potty, or is there a time where you're sitting too long and then that's creating a whole other variety of problems? What would be your
So
recommendation for a parent who's like, my child won't sit?
yeah, a couple of things is my two go-to recommendations are the first one is provide a distractor item and make sure that distractor item is not the thing that you want to provide for them peeing in the toilet, right? So like
Can't
let's
be their
say
big reward. It just needs to be.
right. You're not going to want to use their tablet or like if Skittles are their favorite thing, you're going to want to reserve those for toilet training. But maybe another item that is preferred, a book, a music toy, a car, something else that they like, but isn't going to be the thing that you give them for going in the toilet. So that's number one. And with pretty good success, that often works where you just and you might have a bucket of items, right? Like I often joke that when I went to the dentist as a kid, when you finish at the dentist, you got to go to the treasure box. And it was a bunch of knickknacks that broke within 5 minutes, but it didn't really matter. That was fun for those 5 minutes. So you might have a little like box of things that you can
Yeah.
provide them. And the other thing is I always say, don't make the bathroom weird. You can talk to them, you
Yeah.
can encourage them. It's not just like silence, like
Okay.
you can say, "Oh, remember if you pee in the potty, you can have your, whatever."
Yeah.
Or talk to them about their favorite characters. I have families that like decorate the bathroom with like Marvel characters, and that way they can like talk about Iron Man when they're on the toilet, like those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
make it fun.
I know we
Um,
spent a lot of time sitting on the bathroom ledge, on the shower ledge, just sitting there and just coming up, singing songs, doing whatever, playing music.
anything to not make it terrible, because I don't want to make the bathroom an aversive place, right? Because we need them to go in there to use it.
Well, and that's the other side of things is what do you do with the kid who with parents who are just so discouraged because you don't want to force them on the potty and then it becomes just a struggle and a battle of the wills, which let's face it.
Because then they're never going to want to do it, and you're not
Right.
going to be able to do any toilet training. So that my second go-to for that type of child who like just won't even sit, like just won't even do it, is similar to what I said about public restrooms. So we just do it at home. Walk in the bathroom. Okay, now you can leave. And here's your skittle. Walk in and hang out for 5 seconds. Now you can leave. Walk in and touch the toilet. Now you can leave. Walk in and sit for 2 seconds. Now you can leave. And you just go successive approximations until you get up to sitting for 2 to 5 minutes. And you can move pretty quickly. Once often the child experiences that like, oh, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Like, and I get a skittle at the end.
Yeah.
You start to be able to make some pretty quick progress, but it's a similar progression. Start slow, start
Yeah.
where they can be successful. I'm never going to start with sit on the toilet for 1 minute, right? I'm just going to
Right.
start with just walk in the bathroom and then we're done. Like, that's it. We,
That's
we do that
really
here
good
at
because
Marcus.
yeah, and you don't want to set your child or adult up for failure, but you don't want to set yourself up for failure either, because there's nothing more frustrating than you as a parent and a caregiver decide today is the day that we are going to start, and then it just turns into an absolute disaster. So the idea of starting small and working with that's such great advice for parents who get discouraged and for caretakers at times when we're discouraged often.
Yep.
Any way we can see a little success, that's huge.
Yep.
Um, Another thing, and we can wrap up, but another thing I had a question about is constipation is a big issue within our community, and I know that can affect, especially within males, the ability to release and to
Mhm.
void.
Mhm.
What do you have you ever encountered that? Do you have recommendations for that? Tell parents.
So constipation's pretty significant in the autism kind of world too. Again,
Yeah.
very related, right? We say that Angelman is a manifestation, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever direction it goes. So GI issues are very common. So let me walk through a little bit about bowel movement training as I answer this question, just to kind of like give you all of that information too. So bowel movement training is very different from urine training in that with urine training, we can load up on apple juice and things like that and ensure we get like, 15 voids of urine across a day. You get a lot of chances to practice. With bowel movements, you might only get one, you might get two, you actually might get zero. Like some kids are every other day poopers or things like that. And so, it's hard. Bowel movement training is a lot harder. And this is why we see in the literature that like there's a lot less success with this
Yeah.
because you got to rely on almost luck. It's not like you can load up on a bunch of food and then be like, all right, now we're just going to go poop. Like that's just not how the GI system works.
Right.
So you kind of got to be lucky. And so, we often recommend our treatment strategies are a little bit different, and I'll get to those strategies in a minute. But before the kid comes in for any treatment for bowel movement, they have to go to the GI. They have to see a pediatric gastroenterologist
Right.
because I don't want to make it worse, right? By making the bathroom more aversive, which further leads to constipation. There are a lot of medical reasons that could be related to constipation for this population.
Fair.
There are just as many behavioral reasons to me that kids become constipated, right? It's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. So the bathroom is aversive. I don't want to like poop on the toilet. I don't really like pooping in my pull up because I get all dirty, right? So I start to withhold and I hold in the poop, right? And I make myself constipated. And then when I have to actually poop, it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to do it again. So I keep holding it in and it keeps hurting. So I keep not wanting to do it and I keep holding. It just keeps going. And you got to break that cycle. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And so before they come in, they have to see a GI, and that GI clears them for constipation. And I will say a ton of our kids are on regular regimens of Miralax. And fortunately, that's a very safe med to give on an ongoing basis,
Yeah.
but it just allows the child to become more regular,
Yeah.
so that we can then do toilet training. And the reason that we get not only do we get them cleared because we don't want them to be constipated so that it doesn't hurt. But because our main kind of treatment strategy I mentioned with urine is we spend the whole day in the bathroom because we need to catch them going in the toilet, right?
Yeah.
So with bowel movement training, that's the crux of it. We need to catch them pooping in the toilet. Well, how do we do that? Well, first we give them the opportunity to go, right? They show up in clinic. We say, here's what you're working for based on your preference assessment. And we say, all right, we're going to go sit in the bathroom. And if you go, you can get your prize and you get to go home, right? Your appointment might be 10 minutes and you get to go home.
Yeah.
And that's the first opportunity. But then to ensure that a bowel movement does occur is we do administer a glycerin suppository. And that seems very invasive. And it is. It is an invasive kind of strategy that we will use. And we do have some families that elect to not use that strategy. And of course, that is 100% okay. We do not, you need to convince people to kind of like follow our treatment strategies. If you don't want to, that's okay. We have some consultation, like we can offer some suggestions. We just know that like they're not likely to be successful because again, you kind of are relying on luck. And so that glycerin suppository really does ensure that a bowel movement occurs. In general, what I will say is 75% of our families have done suppositories at home because their children have been constipated. And so
that
parents
is
are like, yeah, that's fine.
in our community as well. Yeah. Not ideal.
Right. And so
no one wants to do it.
right.
But no one wants to have a week, 2 weeks of constipation either. So
right. Well, and then you're in the hospital because they're impacted and then you're having surgery. Right. Which happens. Right. And so like most of our families are like, oh yeah, enemas and suppositories, we've done that before. And so a lot of them are like, that's not a problem. Right. We know it's invasive, but we know it ensures a bowel movement. And then we can provide the prize, but also we can thin and fade out the suppository. Right. So for example, the child comes on day 1 and day 2. They get a suppository each of those days and they poop. Great. They got to go home. They got their prize. On day 3, it's a half a dose. So we actually squirt out half of the liquid and then we only have half that dose. If they go 2 more days at a half a dose, then it's a quarter dose. But the reality is, if you look at the papers that we've published, and we have 3 or 4 papers, we've run this across a huge randomized control trial of over 150 kids. Half of them met with me for consultation. Half of them got treatment. Spoiler, only like 5 kids were successful when I was just telling parents what to do, but like 70% of the kids who went through treatment were successful. I mean, that's not surprising, right?
Right.
But you know, we fade out the suppository, so a good number, probably 50%, go home with nothing, no suppository necessary. It was all done before they were discharged. Yeah. Some kids go home with a suppository, with the parents being trained to use the suppository, and then I'll say with great confidence, within 3 months, most of those kids, it's all gone. Really, within like 2 or 3 weeks. But some kids, you know, need an extended time. But by the time, you know, that happens, they're not using the suppository anymore. It's not like something that we see kids using for like a year. Like we're talking a few weeks, maybe a couple months, and the kids are good to go and they're independent and they're having a bowel movement in the toilet. It's incredibly successful. There are a lot of we're just publishing a new paper, and we just got another grant from NIH looking at the progression from urine training to bowel movement training. And as an aside, one of the things that we have found is that, you know, the kids who go through urine training, I think you alluded to this previously, is that when they're going to the bathroom and sitting so that they can pee, a lot of times they'll like serendipitously have a bowel movement. And then these kids are just bowel movement trained naturally. So of the kids that leave urine training, and we basically tell families, call us back in 3 months. Because what we know is that 50% of the kids who leave us with urine training naturally develop bowel movement traiing. And I think it's because they're sitting on the toilet and they just naturally poop and then they're like, oh my God, yeah, it worked. The other 50% we bring back in.
Yeah.
And so our next grant is what is it about the 50% of kids that are successful after they leave? Can we predict who's going to have the success that doesn't necessarily need the bowel movement training going on? And so we are we are going to be running a study. I think it's like 200 kids, and it's like toilet training from urine all the way through bowel movement and then following up with them again 6 months to a year later. So it's like, what is the whole landscape of toilet training for kids with developmental disabilities?
Well, absolutely amazing. I mean, I think that's something that, again, as a caretaker, when you're told all the things that your child can't do, won't do, and you're like, no, let's open, let's explore, let's look into the possibilities, because our our individuals with Angelman syndrome, they are people first, and they deserve the dignity, the opportunity to be able to go to the bathroom like anyone else.
Hmm.
And like you said, it doesn't always work that way. And there are some that it's just not, and that is okay. But I love that you are giving opportunities to individuals to be able to do it and to see success, and for the caregiver to feel that just weight lifted off their shoulder. I mean, no one wants to buy pull-ups for the rest of their life, and the ones especially in this age between, like, I think 5 and 15 before you're adult, they're just, the incontinence supplies are terrible. They're just
Yeah.
not. That's another thing, we get asked questions all the time. It's like, does anyone have something that works? And I love that we'll be able to say, maybe we don't have a product, but we have something we can, offer you to look into with you.
Hmm.
But again, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I also want to say, for the Marcus Autism Center, it's such a great thing to have in Georgia, being in Georgia, but also just for the whole country to look at and research. But it's marcus.org is that website there. And anything else you want to add, other than we'll see you in 2026, hopefully, and your kids?
No, I would love to come back again. No, I appreciate the invitation. This is a topic that I really care about because, as I said, I think every person is trainable. And I think we've done a disservice to certain populations in saying that these children will never achieve certain things. And that makes me sad, but I'm here to battle against that. And we are a unit that will take any case and try anything to try and help that family. So appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys, and hopefully we'll be talking soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the ASF podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support us, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating or review. And please don't forget to subscribe.